like Venerable Tarpa, I spent quite a bit of my retreat on the four establishments of mindfulness, and in particular, the mindfulness of feeling. And my experience was that I have a pretty good connection when I get the unpleasant or the pleasant feeling, but within a nanosecond, the proliferating conceptuality takes off and just runs away with my mind. And so I kept working on it quite a bit this winter. And what I noticed is during the retreat, every once in a while, Venerable would put something up on the board regarding what was going on in the world. I mean, we didn't want to get tracking the news and things like that. But every once in a while, if there was something that was important that we needed to know, she'd put up on the board. So we had the Muslim ban. There were some other pieces in there when the Attorney General from the state put a kibosh on that first Muslim ban. We were just so proud of being Washington state citizens that he was able to do that. But what I found is that I was really struggling with this increasing. Once the unpleasant feeling happened, I was struggling with a lot of anger, a lot of being really furious with what was going on in the world. I just couldn't handle my mind around it. And so as we started to come out of retreat, I felt like I had to sort of, and Venerable was giving these beautiful teachings. She was giving these beautiful teachings on compassion. She was giving these beautiful teachings on the paths and grounds of the Bodhisattvas, Tong Lin, the 7-point cause and effect. I was taking them on the cushion, but then I would think about what might be going on out there, and I'd get myself all stirred up. I couldn't just hold the unpleasant feeling and let it go. I'd be proliferating about what the country was doing, what Congress was doing, what our president was doing, what Putin was doing. I couldn't get my mind settled down. So I kind of wanted to steel my mind when we came out of retreat, knowing that I would really want to keep my heart open. I would want to really be able to keep the compassion flowing in my mind. And how would I be able to do that? Because I was just struggling. My compassion, my bodhicitta was not very strong, and I was really quite concerned that I was going to come out of retreat and just start this proliferating judgmental mind, angry mind, furious mind, blaming mind, and that it wasn't going to really help me, and it wasn't going to help the people that live with me. So I wanted to find something that I could really hold on to, that I could really keep on my puja table, read at night before I went to bed, something that I could really count on. And so I found a book by a book that was written a number of years ago by one of our teachers, Jeffrey Hopkins. And he has been giving us teachings for a number of years here online, mostly about the wisdom side of the path, the tenet systems. He's done books on meditation on emptiness. He's done them on Tantra. And in his incredible array of profound Dharma books through the course of his life, over 42 books at this point, I'm not sure where they are. In the middle of this, he put out this beautiful book. The first printing, it was called Cultivating Compassion, and the second printing, which was in 2008, was called A Truthful Heart. So in the middle of all these profound books on emptiness and profound books on the tenet systems and on philosophy and on Tantra, comes out this little gem on compassion. So I said, okay, I really, over the years, I have learned to trust and deeply respect this teacher of ours, Jeffrey Hopkins. I love his humor. I love his pointedness. I like his strength of practice. And despite the fact that he's an extraordinary scholar and academic, he is a deeply sincere, accomplished practitioner as well. I mean, I see the full integration of the wisdom and the method side of the path. Just like with Venerable, I see both of these wings of the bird beautifully complemented in Jeffrey Hopkins. So I went ahead and I decided that I was going to use this as sort of my little medicine for the next while. And what I wanted to share with you is part of the introduction on why Jeffrey found the practice of compassion as a crucial piece of his life, and why I feel for my own personal mind why this book is going to be important for me. And I just want to share kind of my insights. When he was still going to Harvard back in the 60s, he met Geshe Wangyal, one of the great Mongolian adept masters in Tibetan Buddhism. And being kind of the bright, brilliant, maybe a little bit cocky Harvard student that he was, he went down and met Geshe-la, and one of the questions he asked on his second visit was, "What is emptiness?" And Geshe-la turned to him and said, "You should know what it is. You're going to Harvard." And Jeffrey said, "But that failed to challenge me." Later on in the conversation, what ended up happening is that Geshe-la, instead of getting into the profound wisdom aspect of the path, Geshe Wangyal said to him, "Once you graduate and you're going back and forth to Boston to work on the subway, you should think about this." And what he did to this brilliant young mind is he gave him the practice of compassion and bodhicitta. And that was back in 1962. And what basically Jeffrey has done is that he has this as one of his core practices now 50 years later. And that he says for all of the doctrine and all of the books that he has written about the philosophy and emptiness, he says, if I can't integrate the doctrine of the Buddha into my mind fully, then there's no point in doing it. He says that's not the be-all and end-all of my life. It's integrating that so I really understand what it is, what the Buddha taught. And so this has become one of his core practices for the past 50 years. And so what I wanted to share with you is I'm just in the introduction. I haven't even gone into the practice yet. And this is what really affected my mind. It really called me and inspired me that I'm going to use this book for help. So he said, I want to share with you what insights I have gained. These are the practices that Geshe-la taught him 50 years ago. For cultivating compassion. I feel the topic is particularly relevant because based on my own experience, and this is what Jeffrey says over and over again in the introduction, this is from my own experience, I have learned that from the infection of the attitude of me against the world, the bottom line of self, 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 either despair or merciless competitiveness erupts, undermining one's own happiness, as well as that of everyone around us, rendering asunder the fabric of society, the very basis of our happy life. So once again, it was right in the face about saying the self-centered attitude, this self-concern, this infection of me, myself, and I, is going to not only destroy my own good heart, but it's going to disturb the minds of others in my life. And the very fabric of society, this hope, this joy, this life of happiness, is going to be just torn. If we as a family of human beings can't use compassion as one of our fundamental core practices. The second piece that called to me, he said, without compassion, number 2, biting criticism of others goes unchecked. Eventually attacking its own autonomous and rammed-in way, even one's friends, one's families, one's own body, and oneself. So this biting criticism left unchecked, the self-centered thought, the self-grasping ignorance, attacking everything. Your family, your friends, even the self-hate of your own body, even the self-hate of your own self, if we don't have compassion in our mind. Without compassion, politics becomes a matter of mere power blocks, counterproductively pushing other blocks around, to the point where all interests are eventually thwarted. And this is kind of basically what we've been seeing, is because there's no compassion in our political process now on what's going on in Congress, what's going on in administration, what's going on the constituencies in our country. Nobody's getting any of their needs met. I mean, it's kind of fundamental. They're just thwarting each other's wanting to get things done because there's no compassion, there's no altruism, there's no kindness. Next, he says, a compassionless perspective leads to the mania of thinking that mere economic success, while admittedly important, is the be-all and end-all of existence, gives rise to immoral pursuit of money, in which one does not recognize the difference between having adequate external resources and true internal satisfaction. So once again, without the compassionate perspective, all we think is that financial success, the power of acquisition of incredible wealth, the wealth in the world, when is it ever going to be enough? Because the internal mechanism to being content on the inside is not getting addressed. And so there's the compassion just lost in this perpetual acquisition of how much is going to be enough. For a lot of the very, very wealthy in our world, there just isn't enough. And so there's just this hunger, this unsatisfied hunger. And then I wanted to add to my own repertoire is that without compassion, I can't live in this community and to be able to see the suffering of people in the community without feeling that they should just get over it, that they should just fix themselves, that they should just, get with the program, and do that with myself, where I don't have any compassion, I don't have any tolerance, I don't have any willingness to give people space in their process. So I wanted to add that it's not just the bigger picture where there isn't compassion, but in my own mind, not to just be able to deal with the atrocities and the craziness that's going on in the world, that I can't have any compassion for my very own community that's trying to transform their minds, trying to work with their own afflictions. So I put that in as with me without my own compassion becomes then I'm a difficult person to live with. Biting criticism of others is unchecked. There we go. So what Jeffrey kind of ends up in the introduction here, he says that the lessons and the techniques that I'm going to present here are especially useful because they're able to gradually transform an indifferent and even an angry mind into one that is at least a little bit more caring, a little bit more concerned, that offers up hope for a saddened world. So he's with all of this kind of, the stories about his life, which was quite an amazing life that he had and how he came to meeting the Dharma and how he uses this beautiful meditation on compassion as kind of his core practice every day, is that he has a lot of hope and that the meditations here are going to really help me and whoever reads this book to realize how Jeffrey was able to bring this compassion into his life, to gladden his mind, to be able to see clearly the nature of reality, to be able to bring that into his life. And so I'm really kind of holding this gently. I'm going to hold it close to my heart to see if it indeed help me with my fury, help me with my intolerance, help me with my, what's wrong with these crazy people? Let's, what are you doing? But to turn it back on and say, how can Semke really grow her compassion, to be able to look suffering, to look anger, to look at tragedy in its face, and not to fall apart, and not to judge, and not to criticize, and not to blame. And I think because I particularly love Jeffrey's style of the book is very pointed, it's very direct, it's very personal, it's very transparent, and I really appreciate that aspect of him personally. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm hoping to share whatever I kind of garner from this over the next few weeks when it's my turn to share what comes up for me. So anyway, that's where I am.